Have you ever found yourself standing in your pantry at 3 in the afternoon, just staring at a healthy organic snack bar and thinking, why am I even doing this? Because you see, you're following all of the rules. You're counting the calories, you're skipping breakfast, you're buying low fat everything. But today you woke up puffy and bloated and exhausted, and you're like, why is my body feeling like it's becoming a stranger to me? And if that's you, I need you to know that it's not you. It's that most of the healthy habits that we were taught back in the 90s are a total disaster for our hormones once we hit 40. They actually trigger belly fat and brain fog, and that's what we're really trying to fix. Look, I'm a health coach, but I am also a woman in perimenopause that had to unlearn every single one of these myths just to get my own energy back. So today we're going to walk through the 7 healthy rules that you need to quit right now if you want to stop the crash and finally start feeling like yourself again. And we have to start with one of the biggest lies that's currently haunting your grocery cart: low fat. So, the very first thing that we need to stop doing today is reaching for that low fat or the fat free version of our favorite foods. And look, this rule came from some really cherry picked studies back in the 60s and 70s that basically convinced the entire world that fat was the enemy. It was a giant experiment, and unfortunately, it's failed us because here is what actually happened. When the food industry took the fat out of your yogurt, your salad dressing, and your crackers, the food tasted gross, like cardboard. And to fix it, they had to replace the texture and the flavor with sugar and corn syrup and thickeners. So when we were in our 20s, maybe our body could handle that sugar better. But in perimenopause, our insulin sensitivity changes, and that low fat yogurt actually triggers a massive insulin spike. And insulin is your primary fat storage hormone. But even more importantly, your hormones, which estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, are literally made from cholesterol and fat. So when you're starving your body of healthy fats, you're essentially starving your endocrine system. And that's why you feel dried out. So dry skin, dry eyes, like your brain is totally foggy. So instead, I want you to start to look for the full fat plain Greek yogurt, okay? Or use real grass-fed butter or ghee, right? It's more satiating, it tastes better, and it finally gives your brain the signal to say, okay, I'm good, I'm not hungry anymore. But here's the thing, we stopped fearing fat. And so the next trap that we run into is this health halo trap, okay? And that is where we think a label on our box can replace our own common sense. So we've been conditioned to think that organic is just friendly for weight loss, okay? And that's what the food industry wants us to think. They're smart. Okay, they know that you're going to pay a couple extra dollars sometimes for a cookies that says, organic or gluten free on the front. But the reality is that your liver and your hormones don't care if the sugar in those cookies was grown without pesticides or not. So, to your blood sugar, organic cane sugar is the exact same thing as any other sugar. Okay, it causes the same spike, the same crash, and the same belly fat storage. So, we spend so much time worrying about the purity of our food that we've honestly completely forgotten to look at the function of our food. And at the end of the day, an organic cookie is still a cookie and should be treated like that. So I want you to start to think of organic as a filter for things that really matter, like your dirty dozen, okay? Your produce, meat to lower the chemical load, and other things that are highly sprayed with glyphosate, like oats and wheat. But I want you to start looking over at any box that says organic, and I want you to start really looking at the ingredients, okay? If flour and sugar are at the top, then it's really not health food. It's really just expensive junk. So the lesson here is to always read the ingredients, okay? Not just focus on the marketing. And look, once we stop looking at those quality labels, we usually go straight back to the numbers. We have been told for 30 years that the only number that matters is the calorie count. But now in your 40s, that math literally doesn't add up. Okay, I know that you're thinking right now, okay, Nikki, I have so many of these things in my kitchen at this exact moment. Look, I've been there, I get it, but the gap between knowing these rules are broken and actually knowing what to buy when you're at the store is where a lot of moms get stuck. And so that's why I created the free guide, Healthy Swaps Made Easy. I want you to think of it like a simple cheat sheet so you can take it to the grocery store and swap out some of those health myths for some real hormone-friendly fuel that actually works. So you can grab the link below for that guide. But I want to get back into why the math that you're doing on your calorie app is really failing your metabolism. So think back to how many times you have stared at a calorie tracking app and you're trying to stay under that elusive 1200 calorie goal. Okay, you felt like you were starving and you still didn't see the scale move. And it is the most frustrating feeling in the world. But look, I really need you to hear me on this, okay? The thing is, right now, the math is just not mathing, okay? And your body is doing what it's told to do based on what you're giving it. See, your body isn't a calculator, okay? A calculator doesn't care where those numbers come from, but your body really actually truly cares. So I want you to think about how many of those little 100 calorie snack packs of crackers or pretzels you've had, okay? Because when you eat those, your body sees a naked carb and instantly flips a switch called storage mode, okay? That's going to start releasing insulin, which is your fat storage hormone, and basically is like, okay, we don't need this energy right now, so we're just going to tuck it right into the belly fat cells for later. And those crackers are so easy to digest that your body doesn't have to do any work. It's like throwing a piece of paper onto a fire, okay? It flares up for just a second and then it's gone and it leaves you hungry just a few minutes later. But I want you to compare that to 100 calories of steak or a couple of eggs. Your body actually has to work hard to break that protein down. And we call that like a digestive tax, okay? Because when you do that, you're actually burning about 25 to 30% of those calories just during the process of eating them. So it's like trying to burn a big solid oak log instead of that scrap paper on it. It takes way more energy to burn and it stays lit a lot longer. But the biggest piece of us, especially for us of those who are over 40, is when you eat those eggs or that steak, you're telling your brain that, okay, I'm good. I am eating, I am fed, I am nourished, and that signals your body to lower your cortisol, which is your stress hormone. Okay? And when your cortisol is high because you're constantly cutting and starving yourself on those tiny little packs, your body's going to go into storage mode. And in that storage and survival mode, your body is going to hold on to every single ounce of weight, especially around your middle. Thank you very much. Because it thinks that you're starving and that you're in like some sort of famine. Okay. So in perimenopause, you cannot starve yourself thin. Okay. Because what's going to end up happening is the exact opposite. You're going to be stressed, exhausted, and not meeting the goals that you want to have. So instead, I want you to really stop counting calories and start counting on satiety. Okay. So I want you to think about using my easy plate method. And I teach this inside of my collective, but it's really focusing on the foods that are going to keep you full for the next several hours. So if you ask yourself that and you're like, okay, the answer is no way, I'm going to be hungry in 30 minutes. And it doesn't matter if it's only 100 calories because it's the wrong fuel for your hormones. So you need to start to focus on the things that are going to make you feel like you can feel full and that you're going to hit your goals. Okay. But even when we start picking the right fuel, we are often making the mistake on how we eat it, especially when it comes to healthy snacks like our fruit, because that sends our energy on a total roller coaster. Look, I want you to picture this. You are trying to be so good. So instead of grabbing a bagel, you grab a big, healthy apple for your big mid-morning snack, okay? You eat it and you feel good for about 20 minutes. And then you're like irritable again and your brain feels like it's voting and you would rather, have chocolate or 5,000 other things. And I call this the naked carb roller coaster because when you eat a carbohydrate by itself, even if it's something healthy like an apple or a banana or a piece of whole grain toasts, your body is going to treat it like a pile of dry kindling, going back to that fire example, right? So you throw it onto your metabolic fire and guess what? It's going to go whoosh, right? It is going to burn bright and fast. Your blood sugar is going to spike way up And your body's already a little sensitive to it, right? Because of your hormones and your perimenopause, right? And all of the things that it's already doing. So it's going to pump out a massive dose of insulin with all of that sugar. But the problem is it usually overcorrects. Okay. So it's going to send your blood sugar crashing down even lower than where you were before. So that crash isn't necessarily a signal that you have no willpower or that you're just hungry all the time. It's actually more of a biological emergency signal because your brain is starting to think that you're running out of fumes. And so it's demanding the fastest possible energy. And that's usually in the form of sugar or caffeine. So that's why you're back in the pantry in the afternoon or you're going through your snack drawer at work because there is a hidden side effect about this that nobody really talks about. Because if you're eating naked carbs, even in the evening, maybe it's a bowl of popcorn or fruit before bed, your blood sugar is going to crash while you're asleep. And when that happens, your body just doesn't let you sleep through it. It's going to start panicking and pumping out adrenaline and cortisol to wake you up and get your blood sugar back up. So that's why those dreaded night sweats or that middle of the night wake up happens. And you're thinking that you're having a massive hot flash when all it is that your hormonal fluctuation is like just a consequence from eating naked carbs in the evening. So, look, I need you to promise me right now that you're not going to let your carbs, you're not going to eat them by themselves anymore. If we're talking in like clothing, right? I don't want you to eat them naked. So I want you to put the clothes on them. Okay. Every time you have a carbohydrate, I want you to give it a protein or a fat buddy. Okay. Because these act like a speed bump. It's going to slow down how fast that sugar hits your system. So instead of just an apple, you have an apple with a big scoop of almond butter. And why did I say big scoop? I mean a tablespoon, like the serving size, because at the end of the day, serving sizes matter, which we'll talk about in another video. But instead of having just crackers, you have crackers maybe with a slice of turkey or some cheese, because when you slow down that burn, you get steady energy all afternoon. And more importantly, you get a full night's sleep. Okay. So look, that's a lot so far. But I know that when we're busy and on the go, the easiest way to get protein is to reach for something quick in the health aisle. Okay. But I'm telling you, your gut and your waistline are probably paying a really high price for that convenience. And because protein bars feel like the perfect responsible choice, it can be hard to not have them. Okay. But I want you to go do something for me. I want you to grab your favorite healthy bar and I want you to start to look at some of the things on the back. Okay. You're probably going to see some ingredients that you don't recognize. Maybe it's a soy protein isolate or sucralose or some seed oils like canola or soybean. And some of these aren't like, they're not just big words, okay? They're medicines for your gut. They're also, some of them are also sugar, right? And so our gut microbiome is the bacteria that lives in our digestive tract. And it's already going through this massive shift. So when you're throwing in those artificial fibers and those fake sweeteners, it's like setting off a little tiny bomb in your stomach. And that's where you're getting that like bloat from later. When you wake up and you're fine in the morning, but in the afternoon, you're pregnant and you're tight and your jeans don't fit anymore and you just want your leggings because it's more comfortable. Okay, that's inflammation. And the thing is that your body's not going to let go of the weight if it's constantly fighting inflammation because it's too busy trying to calm down your gut without burning fat. Okay, so here's the deal. I want you to start to swap real food because it's actually way cheaper and way more effective than the grab and go protein bars that you have all around all the time. Now, look, I am not saying that you can never have a protein bar. Please hear me loud and clear on this. What I am saying is that if those are your go-tos and you're reaching for them often, then you really need to start thinking about what exactly you need to change out to have in your fridge. Okay. At the end of the day, it's not just about what we're buying or how often we're buying these things. It's about when we're asking our bodies to perform. And there's one morning habit that I see in almost every mom that's setting you up for hormonal failure even before you leave the house. And it's something that I really had to learn the hard way. I'm not the coffee police. I love my coffee, but we have to talk about this trend of fasting all morning with nothing but some coffee, right? Either 3 cups of black coffee or coffee with a bunch of creamer in it that's a ton of sugar. Because here's the deal. when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol, which we talked about, your main stress hormone, is already naturally at its peak. And that's where you want it to be. You want it to be the highest in the morning. Okay. And that's your body's alarm clock signal. So when you pour caffeine into a completely empty stomach, you aren't just waking up, you're actually pouring like high octane gasoline into this cortisol fire. Okay. So your brain doesn't know if you're just trying to get through the morning or if you're like being chased by a tiger. Okay. Because it thinks you're running for your life no matter what you're doing. And it might be that you're just checking an email. Okay. So here's the thing, in response, it's going to flip that survival switch. Okay. That's on and off switch that's going to send the signal to store fat, especially around your middle. Okay. And it's going to save that energy for emergency, and it's shutting down all of your non essential things like your reproductive hormones. So that's why you get this like tired but wired feeling all day, or when you're going to sleep, you're like, I am so tired, but I can't fall asleep. And that crash, it's coming for you in the afternoon. So look, I'm not telling you to quit your coffee, okay? I love my coffee. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that. But I also want you to eat at least 20 to 30 grams of protein before you drink your coffee. And I've done a whole video on what you can do to reach that, and you can go back and take a look at that. But what I also want you to know is you can also have protein in your coffee, okay? I use a really clean protein. I have a clean protein brand that I put into my coffee, and that helps me so much. So I want you to think about that, because it is so important to start to really study your cortisol in the morning, and you'll have more energy all day, and you're going to have way less of that mid-morning anxiety. Okay. All of these together are a lot. I get it. I know I had to break them all myself, but it leads me to the final rule. And it's honestly the hardest to break, because it's not really about what's on your plate, but it's more about what's happening in your head. Okay. And we've been conditioned by decades. Okay, of diet challenges to think that if we're not 100% perfect, that we've somehow failed or screwed up. Okay. And this is honestly where I start to see so many women disappear on themselves. You eat that one unplanned cookie and you feel that wave of shame, and your brain's like, well, I already blew it. I may as well just eat whatever I want. It all goes back to the what the hell effect that I talked about in one of my last videos. At the end of the day, the science of why that Monday never comes and you consistently start over is stressing over that cookie actually raises your cortisol more than the cookie itself. So shame is really truly like this metabolic toxin. And when you're in that spiral of guilt, you're triggering the exact same fat storage hormones as if you'd eaten a giant bag of sugar. So that all or nothing mindset is the biggest wall standing between you and the results you want. And honestly, it's why I built the collective, because most programs out there will give you a list of good and bad foods. They're going to give you a meal plan, but they don't teach you the actual skills of why you need to do the things that you're doing and how to stay in the game when life gets messy or your kids get sick or you just really wanted the cookie. Because inside the membership, we work on bridging the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it when you've got real life going on, right? So we move away from starting over and we move towards staying in. And so a big piece of this is adapting that 80-20% rule. Okay. So 80% of the time you're choosing that real hormone friendly food, and 20% of your life is life. Okay. I don't want you to think that there's any sort of overhaul, because we're not doing that. We're working on hitting your goals that are important to you, and a consistent lifestyle that doesn't really make you miserable. So look, I get it. I know this is a lot. And the hardest part isn't actually unlearning these rules. It's more that if you stop following them, that you're going to lose control. But the reality is these rules are the reason that you feel so out of control in the first place. And I'm telling you this because I want you to stop disappearing on yourself. I want you to stop being the woman and the mom who checks out on Friday and spends all day Sunday dreading Monday, because you have to start being good again and getting back on track. Because you don't need a new track. You just need to start owning your choices and fueling the body that you have right now, not the one that you had when you were in your 20s. Okay, so if you want to start today, grab the Healthy Swaps guide I put in the description. It's going to help you understand what to buy and how to swap things out. Okay. And for the moms who are really ready to actually start to bridge that gap between just watching these videos and finally doing the work, I want you to check out the link below for Real Food Made Easy, the collective. And we're going to work inside. When messy, we're going to get messy. And look, if you're ready to see what the actual shifts are for hormones, I want you to go watch this video on the 5 health shifts you need to know in perimenopause next.